Hey guys, welcome back to Nyx Reads. Thank you so much for watching. Please feel free to subscribe if you love watching bookish content, and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoy watching monthly reading wrap-ups. Sorry for the dramatic lightning right now, the sun is right in my face, but it's my lunch hour and I have time to film this video. Before it gets too late, I wanted to talk to you about the 8 books that I've read in December last year. I do these monthly wrap-ups for every single month, sometimes a bit late like today, but nevertheless I wanted to take the opportunity to also talk about my full year-end stats. If you also use Storygraph to track your reading, I'm gonna leave a link to my profile down below in case you want to follow me. I don't know about you, do you have both Goodreads and Storygraph? I like to use Goodreads to keep my TBR and also to read and write reviews, but I prefer Storygraph for all the amazing stats that they provide if you put in all the books that you read. First of all, I managed to hit my reading goal. I said I want to read at least 60 books and I read a total of 82. I still cannot wrap my head around people who manage to read 200 plus books during the year, especially if you have a full-time job. Please teach me your ways. I would love that. I have so many books that I want to get through. The genres that I read most last year are contemporary, which makes sense because I love lit fic, thriller, also no questions asked, makes total sense for it to take the number 2 spot. Romance, so that's kind of a surprise. I mean, I've been actively trying to try out more romance books, so I'm glad to see that I obviously succeeded with this goal. Horror, nobody's surprised, I love my horror novels. And fantasy. This is great to see fantasy on there because it was also one of my goals to get back into fantasy reading. The authors that I repeatedly picked up last year were Jennifer Lynn Barnes, which makes sense because I read 3 of her Inheritance books from her series last year. One of them I actually read in December, so I'm going to talk about that in a bit. She's a YA author. Then we have Ali Hazelwood, whom I picked up a few novellas from. That was okay. And then Ilana K. Arnold. Ilana K. Arnold is a great middle grade author. I read 3 of her Bat books. I'm gonna put the title on here because I forgot what the tagline is, but it's such a cute story about a family that raises a baby skunk. I read 63% medium-paced books, 23% fast-paced, and 14% slow-paced books. That sounds about right to me. 55% of all the books I read are between 300 and 499 pages long. Quite a few, 37% under 300 pages, so I picked up a few more novellas and shorter books last year. And 9% have over 500 pages. I'm happy with my fiction versus nonfiction split. I read 22% nonfiction versus 78% fiction. Most of the nonfiction I read during Nonfiction November. If you watched my wrap up for November, you would have seen that all the books I read in that month, or finished, I should say, were nonfiction, which is a great milestone for me. With almost a quarter, I'm very happy about this. I don't have a specific goal in mind for next year. I'm suspecting it's gonna be a bit more towards 30%. Because I have quite a few nonfiction books I'm excited about. My reading format is pretty cool. I'm very happy with this. So I read 49%, so almost exactly half in print, so physical books. 24% digital, which means it was either ebooks from my library or e-arcs from NetGalley. And then 27% audiobooks, which were most likely also from my library through the Libby app. I read in 3 languages last year. I read mostly in English, almost 90%, but 11% were German books, and then 1.2%, which translates to 1 book that I'm going to talk about later, I read in Filipino and Tagalog. Interesting to see that Storygraph doesn't differentiate between what Filipino language I was reading in. It should say Tagalog on there. Maybe this is something I can kindly, very nicely bring up to Storygraph to be a bit more specific here. My overall rating is very similar to what I had in 2022. It's 3.76, so very, very close to 4 stars. You can see that I read a bunch of books anywhere between 3 and 4.5 stars, so the average makes total sense to me. What really surprised me is that 29 of the books that I read were part of a series. I didn't even realize that. That is a lot. 2 books I reread, which I'm happy with that, but I want to keep that up in the coming year. 3 books I DNF'd. It should be more. I really need to work on just letting a book go if it's not for me. and 32 books were for my own shelf, so books that I already owned that I read, which is great. I want to slightly increase that number for next year, or this year I should say. Those were my year-round stats for 2023. Is there anything in there that we have in common? Let me know, I'm super curious. So in December, I read 8 books and DNF'd 1. It so happens that 3 books out of this stack I already mentioned in my worst books of 2023. So I'm not gonna go into them in details. I'm just gonna link you to that video because I don't know why December was not the best reading year for me. I guess maybe I lost a bit of steam there because I was also just catching up on books that I started throughout the year and I was just tying up loose ends. As usual, I'm gonna go to worst rated to my best rated books, and stay tuned until the end to find out how much money I saved by using my library card. Because we're going from worst to best, let's start with the one that I DNF'd and the 2 that I really didn't like, which are in my worst stuff video. So very short, it's The Book of Difficult Fruit by Lebo. This is a nonfiction that just really wasn't for me, with 26 essays about fruits. And then I also really disliked The Sugar Thief by Nancy Mauro. I just didn't think that the characters were great or the plot line. And then Cytonic by Sanderson. This is not a bad book, but I was just so incredibly disappointed by it because this is the 3rd book in the series. I loved the first one. The second one was also 4 stars, and this one was 1.5 stars. So next up, with 3 stars, is Stay Out of the Basement by R.L. Stine. This is a Goosebumps novel. Who remembers these? I loved these when I was in elementary school and middle school. And for Christmas, I was so excited. I've been wanting this for a while now. My boyfriend got me this amazing tin with 5 little Goosebumps novels from the, I think, original 70, the first 70. I'm so excited. So I'm chipping away at these slowly, and the first one I read was this one here, which I don't think I read this when I was younger, so it was actually a first. Just in case you've never heard about Goosebumps before, R.L. Stine is like the Stephen King for kids, and he has the series called Goosebumps with a lot of different books in it. It's a whole franchise now. There's so many movies and series out. I love all of them. I watch all of them. This series is specifically targeted towards middle school children. So any things that happen in this book, and so these are like sci-fi, horror, suspense. They all have these crazy twists and turns, but all fantastical. So there's like no death or divorce in here. They're not real life problems, because those he keeps for his Fear Street novels, which those are meant for teenagers, but Goosebumps is strictly middle grade. In this story, Dr. Brewer spends a lot of time in his basement, and his kids, Margaret and Casey, sometimes sneak down there to meet some of the plants he's working on, and it gets very weird down there. And you can tell by this green planty hand that something weird is happening, and it's honestly a good book. It was good 3 stars, didn't wow me. It wasn't one of the best that I read, but anyways, I'm glad that I read this, and at some point I hope to have read all of the Goosebumps series out there so I can do like a ranking video. Next up, also with 3 stars, I finished The Final Gambit by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is from the Inheritance series that I mentioned earlier. This is a YA series where in the first book we have our main character, Avery Graham. She's a teenage girl. She grows up very poor, and her plan in life is to get a scholarship for a good college so that she can work her way up and build a life for herself. But her life changes in an instant when suddenly billionaire Tobias Hawthorne leaves her his entire fortune. There must be some kind of catch, because Avery is a total stranger to this deceased billionaire. Nobody knows why he left his properties and his entire fortune to this random girl. One of the things she has to do to actually get this inheritance is move to the Hawthorne mansion, to the Hawthorne house, where she meets the Hawthorne brothers, who happen to be her age. And together with them, she discovers that there are puzzles, riddles, clues that Tobias Hawthorne left for all of them to solve. This transforms Avery's life into a real life escape room. If you like riddles and things like that, you will probably really enjoy this series. I personally think that the second book was the strongest one. In this third book, I really wasn't into the love triangle, and the characters are overly dramatic. They have super dramatic personalities, which really is, I think, specific to the YA genre, but that part is really not for me. So it's kind of a me problem. This book did a good job in tying up all the loose ends. I know that there are other books out there to continue the series, but you can't stop at book 3 if you want to have all your questions from book 1 answered. To be honest, I already forgot how this book ended, so I don't think I'm going to continue with this. I had my fun with this. Whenever I did pick a book up, it went very fast. I flew through them, but they're just not going to be, there's no way that book 4 or 5 or whatever are going to be favorites of mine, so I don't think I'm going to continue with this series. Next, also with 3 stars, I read A Merry Little Meet Cute by Julie Murphy and Sierra Simone. This is described as a steamy plus-size holiday rom-com. One of our main characters is B. Hobbs, aka Bianca von Honey. That is the name that she uses for her adult film star career. But at the same time, she's also interested in becoming a global film star. She has a chance to switch to something more traditional when her producer approaches her and wants to hire her for a very squeaky clean Hope Channel, I guess that's something like Netflix, holiday rom-com. So she gets hired for the film and has to keep it a secret that she at the same time is an adult film star. Now, she's not the only one with secrets. Her male co-star is Nolan Shaw, who is an ex-boy band member. Now, what Nolan doesn't know is that B used to be a super fan back in the days, and B doesn't know that Nolan is at the moment a super fan of Bianca von Honey. This was a fun holiday romance. It had great plus size but also queer representation. It also had a lot of important things to say about adults who voluntarily want to work in the sex industry. It's just that all in all, it was not very memorable. I actually forgot that I even read this book when I was preparing this video. And also it took me quite a while to get through it. It's not a very long book, but there were some very draggy parts in there. So I think if you want something like super fun and spicy for Christmas, and put this on your TBR for maybe December, but it's just not going to go down as a very memorable favorite rom-com. Next, I listened to Bossypants from Tina Fey. Now, this was super fun because she herself narrates this audiobook, so it really felt like I was watching stand-up. It's a variety of essays about all different kinds of topics that she touches on that happened to her in her life. A lot of the parts are about SNL. Now, I don't really watch SNL. I don't really follow any of the comedians, but it was interesting to see, to get a glimpse into that world of comedy. What was fun for me was hearing her talk about how she became Sarah Palin for SNL. So I actually went in and then watched on YouTube like all of the sketches that she did as Sarah Palin. Again, not very memorable. I gave this a 3 stars. If you are a fan of Tina Fey and any of her work, so I think it's 100% worth it to read this book, or in my case, I think it's so worth it to listen to her read this book aloud as audiobook. Next, with 3.5 stars, I have this book in Tagalog, which is a children's book because I've never read anything in that language before. I wasn't sure if I could even read a full-size novel in that language, but turns out it was a good choice for me to pick a children's book because there were so many words in here that I had to look up, which is why it took me quite a while to get through this, even though it's so tiny. So this book is called Wala Kayo sa Paa Ko, Sabi ng Pinamakatalinong Bata sa Buong Mundo, which translates to, you have nothing on my feet, says the world's smartest boy. I bought this book when I was in the Philippines. Now, I didn't realize that the author, Maria Solar, she's actually from Spain, and then her book was translated by Maria Luisa P. Young into Tagalog. The artist is Gusti. Sorry, I should specify that she translated it to English, and then to Tagalog, it was Michael M. Coroza. This is technically a book in a book. Our main character is Melchor. He is a boy who participates in a contest to find out who the smartest kid in the world is. So he gets assigned the topic of feet, which he's very confused about because he much rather would be assigned the topic of, I don't know, space. So his mom actually gives him a book with a lot of information in the history of feet. And this is the book within the book that you then also read. I was positively surprised because not only do we talk about the physiology of feet and why they're so important, you know, to explain to children, and what a difference it made for humanity that we are able to use our hands for something else, why we walk only on 2 feet and not on 4 like a lot of animals. But out of everything that I read in December, this made me feel the most accomplished because I've never read anything in Tagalog before and I had to put the work in, but it was so worth it and I'm so happy, and I'm 100% going to pick up another children's book in that language. And lastly, with 4.5 stars, the best book that I read in December is Snowden by Catherine Walsh. I picked this book up because one of my viewers, Michaela, I saw her give this a glowing review on Goodreads and I thought, wow, I feel like this is something I would really like. It even says like for fans of Sophie Kinsella. As usual in a romance, we have 2 main characters. One of them is Megan. She hasn't been home in 4 years because she's kind of afraid to do so, because 4 years ago she left her fiance at the altar and people have opinions about her. And the other character that we meet is Christian. Now, Christian has his own reasons why he's not so into going home for Christmas, because he once again is alone. He doesn't have a partner. His family put so much pressure on him and on not being alone and bringing somebody home. So as it happens, these 2 characters, they've met before. They were together in school, so their paths cross in a pub, and that's when they decide to fake date throughout the holidays. So they drop a contract, they set themselves some rules, and basically they promise each other that they'll be there for each other during the holidays. So they're gonna be there for all of the events if they don't want to go to alone, and keep each other company and support each other. How cute is that? I honestly think that the setup for this whole trope was so well done. The way that the characters were slowly working out all the rules and regulations for this fake dating, it was so satisfying. It was so interesting to read. Both of the characters have fully fledged backstories and such an interesting family life. Both of them have very different family dynamics. Each of them is struggling with their own life, with their own thing, but at the same time, both of them are such lovable characters. So it's very easy for you to root for them and want them to be together, because obviously what we want is, out of this fake dating trope, is that they get together for real in the end, right? So almost a perfect holiday romance for me. I don't know what it is that was missing for me. There was just, I don't know, just a little something that brings you to the 5 stars that I didn't quite have, but still, it was great. Highly recommend to put this on your TBR for next Christmas. So those were all the books that I read or DNF'd in December. Now, the money that I saved by using my library card was $102.96 Canadian before taxes even. This is the last video where I reflect on my 2023 reading. One of my next videos is gonna be my reading goals for 2024. So if you're interested to hear what I'm planning for this year, then definitely subscribe. If you want to let me know that you're still watching, why don't you leave me some kind of foot emoji for this book here. Thank you so much for watching. Please give this video a thumbs up if you enjoy wrap-ups, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.